Yo, what is up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here, along with Sean.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, he's not ready for this. You can tell it's his first time. But nevertheless, here on the charge, we're going to be
Facts.
talking about some NFL scheduling. I told you guys I wanted to kind of branch out in this channel, talk about different sports, and I thought the best time to talk about it was, of course, when the NFL schedule just released. We know what teams are going to be playing with who, and it looking like there's going to be some winners in this team. There's going to be some losers. Nevertheless, we're going to be starting off in the AFC East. But before we start on that, Sean, do you have anything to add to what we found out about this NFL schedule?
Personally, I think it looks like the AFC is going to have an advantage here just based on miles traveled. I feel like that's just kind of a fact going into the NFL season. They have to go less distance for their matchups. Uh, Typically, the NFC teams, in my opinion, have been better in the past couple of years. No matter what it is, division by division, it's been a lot more competitive. So, I mean, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and of course, we have many teams with those kind of advantages. We see that some playoff teams, like the Baltimore Ravens, which we'll be talking about later, kind of have a easier schedule by the numbers. But like I said, let's start off in the AFC East. The first team we got to talk about, the Buffalo Bills. We know that they added Diggs. There's a lot of more players added to it. This is going to be Josh Allen again at the helm. When you look at the schedule, we see they're going to be playing teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, the Seattle Seahawks, which are going to be tough games, the 49ers, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to be, rearing back and ready to go with Big Ben back at the helm. What do you see this Buffalo Bills team looking like as the season progresses?
Personally, I don't have a ton of faith in the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen as a quarterback, I honestly don't believe that he's extremely impressive. Yes, they made the playoffs last year as a wild card, but I just don't see them, being able to make a commanding presence, even with Stephon Diggs. They have to go against the NFC West, so like the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the 49ers, and the Rams. And those are some of the best teams in football. That's probably the most competitive division in football.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can throw in teams, like the Chiefs, and that's just spelling out. I mean, at best, probably an 11-5 season, but I think it could be even worse. I think they're going to have to compete for the win, but there's a chance they might not even win their division, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the AFC East, it's no longer the Tom Brady division. It's no longer the New England Patriot division where they can kind of rack up all the wins against those teams. This is going to be a more, I wouldn't say well balanced, but it's going to be a lesser of competition all over the board. I mean, like I said, we got the Jets, we got the Dolphins, we got many teams, New England Patriots, and them, and it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be a toss-up of who wins these games. I'm like you, I'm not really having too much faith in the Buffalo Bills, but I am picking them as my winner of this division just based on default that they have the better players. They don't have a rookie quarterback going into this. There's no Tom Brady anymore. They got Stid, as he's well known across the league. So
Yeah.
I think that when we look at the whole schedule, I have to put them first, but I'm not confident that they're going to be doing too much damage when it comes to them. I mean, like you said, they don't. The running back situation, it's a little interesting. They got my boy Zach Moss, rookie out of Utah. Love him, but I just think, like I said, this division is going to be a tough one to navigate. And like I said, it could be a coin flip as to who really wins it. But I'm going with the Buffalo Bills as number one. Where do you have the Buffalo Bills in your estimation?
I have the Buffalo Bills going number two, and this may surprise a lot of people, but I have the New York Jets winning the division for the first time since Mark Sanchez. So I think the Jets are prepped up to be really good. I mean, they kept Adams. I think Sam Darnold's ready to emerge as a really good quarterback. Le'Veon Bell, they drafted Mims, who's going to be a really good wide receiver out of Baylor, a
Mm-hmm.
really big guy. He kind of reminds me of Metcalf, really good in going up and catching the ball in the air. I think the Dolphins might be able to surprise at least one win off of the Bills, just having Tua alone. That's a massive improvement for them. And you can't really count out Bill Belichick and the Patriots just because they have been so good. I know they lost Tom Brady, but Bill Belichick always has tricks up his sleeve, so he might be able to pull up something and take a win away from the Bills. I think the Jets are actually the best primed offense here and defense to be able to win this division. I don't think they're honestly done with signing people. They've been in the talks to sign Jadeveon Clowney, so I mean they have the money to sign at least one other big player. And so for me, it's going to go the Jets, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. Patriots falling all the way from first to last for the first time in probably a decade.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the Patriots might be tanking for a certain quarterback in 2021 out of Clemson. But nevertheless, you talked about the New York Jets. I look at their schedule. Kind of a funny schedule actually when you look at it. November 15th, they play the Dolphins. They have a bye week the next week, and then a week after that, they play the Dolphins again. So that's a little funny in that situation. But these are some brutal schedules for these teams. I mean, if we look at the first couple of games for the New York Jets, you of course got the Bills. I'm gonna mark that up to the Bills. You have the 49ers, runner-ups in the Super Bowl. That's gonna be a tough one. Colts could be a toss-up. We don't know how Phillip Rivers is gonna be in that team. Yeah. Denver Broncos should be a win, and then the Cardinals is also a toss-up. They added
Browns are a wild card too, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wild card teams in this, and of course you have to play the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to be a lot better than other teams, but we'll talk about that when we go to the NFC West, because we're both from the greater Seattle area. But nevertheless, like I said, the Jets, I get what you're saying. I'm a big fan of Sam Darnold, and I think this is actually a prove-it year for Sam Darnold, if in my opinion, because
100%.
Sophomore year, you get that kind of under your feet. Either you get a sophomore progression or you get a sophomore slump. And obviously he went through the slump. He didn't really have a great first year, but they did improve. They kept getting better every year. It just sucks that the schedule kind of falls in their favor of not being a very good one. So
Definitely.
Let's move on to the Miami Dolphins next. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback for them. They drafted him. This team is obviously in a rebuilding phase with offensive line problems everywhere. So you had them in third place on their roster, or I should say the NFC East build out. Why do you think that? Like, what do you think?
I think getting Tua is going to bring them up to a better record than 5-11. I mean, maybe 6-10, 7-9. I don't think it's enough to bring them over the top. Even their wide receiver situation isn't really enough for me to give them enough weapons to be competitive. I think their best wide receiver is Devontae Parker last year, and every year before this, he hasn't been that good. He had a good year, but I really don't think they have the weapons on offense for him to be able to carry them into a top 2 finish or a playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, even just looking at their roster, obviously, who knows if Tua's even going to be starting for them, because they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, or Scruffy as I like to call him. He's, it's like when you build expectations on Ryan Fitzpatrick, he doesn't perform. But if there's no expectations on him, he's performed. So I think, obviously, what I'm going to be seeing is that I think the Miami Dolphins are going to be a little bit better than other people are expecting. But that's only until Ryan Fitzpatrick gets the expectation on his hands and then gets yanked out of the game, and then we finally start to see the recognition of getting Tua those reps and seeing how he performs. Obviously, in my opinion, I like to just throw the guys under the fire, see how they perform. Obviously, this is not going to be a very big that's obviously probably not going to be the case for Tua. And looking at the running back position, they have Britta as one of their running backs. I'm not too sold on him. I just think, like, looking at their roster, obviously it's a rebuilding roster.
It is.
And I just don't see them getting any better than what they're at right now. And I'm with you. I think they're going to be in third place.
Yeah, they do have Josh Rosen. He could surprise some people. Just kidding. I mean, he's horrible.
Just with what he has to say. But
yeah.
Moving on to probably, like I said, the biggest surprise here, not due to the fact that they've done anything, but the fact that they've lost the great Tom Brady. I think that he's the GOAT. Obviously, people have their different opinions. But nevertheless, looking at their roster, looking at their schedule, it's definitely not favorable. I think it's probably one of the harder ones out there, in my opinion. What do you have to say about their schedule?
I agree. I mean, they still have the full NFC West teams to face. They have to go against Deshaun Watson. They have to go against Lamar Jackson. Also, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I feel like we're looking at maybe a 4-12, 3-13 team here.
Yeah, like you said, it's tough. Even their division is not going to be a gimme like it was these past couple years. Obviously, Patriots fans have enjoyed the 20 years that they've had Tom Brady of being number one and everything. So, like you, I don't see them winning a lot of games. Obviously, they'll get some gimmies. I think that they'll probably win against the Denver Broncos. I'm not sold on them. I mean, even just looking at that, like, it is tough. Like, even the Jets are going to play them. Like, I know they're probably going to break even with the Jets, but
I mean, the
like
Broncos isn't even a gimme for them. It's just they don't. Who's their quarterback? I mean, I think if they were smart, they'd go sign someone like Cam Newton and make themselves competitive. But I don't know if Bill Belichick just likes those type of players.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a dislike of the players or maybe he's looking at someone in the next year's draft that he's really eyeing on. I don't know whether it's Trevor Lawrence or JT
Yep.
Fields, whatever, whoever the quarterback is that they're eyeing, or even it might not even be a quarterback because the Patriots have surprised us before with their drafting habits. We know Belichick is he's very unpredictable. I feel like he goes against the grain of what everyone says that he's going to draft. I think just because he's like, well, if they're saying I'm going to draft him, I don't think I'm going to draft him.
Definitely. I mean, he drafted one wide receiver in the first round in like 20 something years. He doesn't do things that normal coaches do. So we'll see if his system can continue without Tom Brady, but might not.
Yeah, so just to recap for people, this is what we have for our AFC East, at least from my perspective. I have the Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots. Sean, you had the Jets, Bills, Dolphins, Patriots.
Yep.
We all agree that the Patriots are going to be probably last and probably trying to vie for at least that number one pick.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with the fact that I hate the Patriots, but
Hey, that 2015
2015 Super Bowl still hurts.
It still hurts to this day here in Seattle. But let's move on to a potential Super Bowl winner, or at least a Super Bowl contender, and that is, of course, the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC North Division. The Baltimore Ravens, I feel like, got a pretty gimme schedule. And I know that you had some gripes about it. I know that we talked about this before we had our show. You have a little bit of something to say, so why don't you say that as I prepare their roster really quick?
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like to me that it was set up for the Ravens to make a run here. I mean, yeah, they went 14-2 and they took a first round exit or after their bye, but to me, you look at the Ravens schedule and they have the easiest schedule in football. And not to mention that, they also travel the least amount of miles of every single team in the NFL. And so when you look at that planning with just like a delayed release and schedule, to me, it just looks like the Ravens are almost getting handed the opportunity to take advantage here and win. And yeah, Lamar Jackson is really good and they have a lot of good players, but I just don't necessarily see them as that Super Bowl team that they're built out to be. And it almost feels like to me that they're getting an advantage that other teams aren't. So
when you look at their schedule here, what do you think they're going to go? Do you think they're going to be like another 14-2 season,
Yeah.
maybe 13-3? Like what do you think is going to be the result from this schedule that you're looking at?
yeah, I mean, I don't see 14-2 happening, but their schedule's not hard by any means. A lot of teams they're playing don't have necessarily set quarterbacks. I mean, they play the Bengals twice who have Joe Burrows. You never know how a rookie quarterback's going to do. They play the Redskins, they play the Jaguars, they play the Giants. These teams are just not very good teams. Even, going up against teams like the Steelers too, and the Titans. I don't think the Titans have that good of a quarterback. I don't think Ryan Tannehill, I think he's going to probably regress from the year before, in my opinion. Their schedule seems to be pretty easy, and so I could definitely see them going 13-3, maybe 12-4. But I just don't know if their team is necessarily good enough to challenge for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we know that Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens run a particular style of offense, a lot of play action heavy, a lot of read option, and very RPO heavy team. And of course, they lost one of their tight ends to free agency. I'm not sure where he went again. I think it was Mark Andrews. Oh no, he's still here on the roster. But they lost. I can't remember what the dude's name is. I think he had long hair. But nevertheless, they lost their tight end. I don't really believe in their weapons beside Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. I think that he's probably a decent player. But other than that, you have a regressed Willie Snead. You have Wesley. I mean, I'm not really convinced about this roster in that aspect, but they still have Mark Ingram. They still have a pretty decent running back. And, Lamar Jackson's going to do his thing. like you said, I'm probably going to regress them to like a 12-4 season, just due to the fact that I think that because their schedule is easy, they're going to relax a little bit, and I think that they're going to lose some. They're going to lose at least one or two games where they should really win, and I think those games are going to be the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I think they could definitely lose to the Cowboys. I mean, I think they play the Colts. The Colts could be a surprise with Phillip Rivers. So, I mean, you give T.Y. Hilton a good quarterback, it could be a difference maker.
Yeah, and so where do you have the Baltimore Ravens in your position? Do you have them first?
As far as the Baltimore Ravens go, yeah, I'm going to have them winning the division. Um, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a blowout as it was before, because last year, you had the Steelers taking second with an 8-8 record that may have been the worst division in football. The Browns definitely underachieved. I don't necessarily think that's going to mean the Browns are going to do better this year, because I don't think Baker Mayfield's the answer. But I think the Ravens still have enough to be taking first here.
Yeah, and speaking of the AFC North, we got to talk about probably the newcomer to the team, and that is of course Joe Burrows and the Cincinnati Bengals. This is going to be a very interesting case, because I think that their schedule is probably one of the most brutalist schedules, I think, besides the New England Patriots, in my opinion. Because I think that looking at their schedule, I don't really see them winning many games. Maybe 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but honestly, after watching Joe Burrows play and just picking apart Clemson, 6 touchdowns, I think, in the first half, to me, that just looks like a quarterback who could turn it around. And I feel like if you're a quarterback drafted, you should be good enough to start as a rookie. Maybe I'm biased as a Seahawks fan with Russell Wilson starting as a rookie and throwing 25 touchdown passes and tying Peyton Manning. But I just think that if you're a rookie quarterback and you're meant to be starting and be good, you're going to be good enough to get in there. And I think Burrows could bring this team out of the dumpster and bring them into potentially a second place finish, in my opinion. He's got a lot of good receivers. AJ Green stays healthy. If John Ross stays healthy, they just have a lot of weapons, in my opinion, especially on the offensive end. And with a good quarterback like Joe Burrows, if he lives up to what he's supposed to be, I don't see any reason they can't be competing for a wild card spot.
Yeah, I just think my issue with the Cincinnati Bengals is that although their offense has a lot of good weapons, you have AJ Green, you have Joe Mixon, John Ross, you have a lot of those type of weapons. The defense, in my opinion, is not going to cover it for them, especially in this brutal division where they play out in the snow. That's a very run-heavy team. Obviously, I think Joe Burrow with his average-size hands, as it's
very average size,
very average.
Jared Goff hands.
The Jared Goff hands. But nevertheless, looking at it, I just only see 3 wins. I think the 3 wins are going to come from the Miami game. I think it's probably going to come from the New York Giants game and the Redskins. I mean, anybody playing any team in the NFC East is going to get a W automatically if it's not the Cowboys or the Eagles. So it's just looking at it, I'm not convinced that this team will get the W's that they'll need to, especially on the defensive end. They'll probably score some points. I think Joe Burrow will surprise some people. I don't think he's going to be a bust. In my opinion, I like Tua a little bit better than Joe Burrows, but I still I agree with you that Joe Burrows is still going to be a good quarterback. I think that this team is vastly going to be underrated offensively. It's just I don't think the defense is going to carry them to what they need to get to.
That's fair. I just don't see any reason they can't beat the Jaguars or beat the Steelers twice and the Redskins and the Giants. I mean, Danny Dimes to me is not very good. So I feel like they could at least get 5 wins. But I mean, to me, it's in that division. There's potential that they could come in second. I don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of teams that always come in second, number 2. The Cleveland Browns, probably one of the most underachieving teams last season. Obviously, we had high expectations for Baker Mayfield, high expectations for Odell Beckham Jr. when he came into the team. But, of course, they underachieved. There's a lot of speculation as to why that happened. Obviously, they're going to have a new coaching staff. Baker is going to have a new coordinator. I mean, what do we make of the Cleveland Browns? What do you see the Cleveland Browns' expectations?
I mean, I don't see any reason they shouldn't have the same expectations as the year before. They just need to perform better. It's all on Baker Mayfield. I mean, I think he really underachieved. He has an easy division to kind of work with outside of the Ravens. I don't see any reason he shouldn't be able to, beat the Giants, Titans, Jaguars, go beat the Raiders and the Steelers, and Redskins and Bengals twice. I mean, personally, on paper, he should be able to do that. But as far as my opinion goes, I think the Bengals will surprise them. But you know, I see the Browns. I see them taking third, and the Steelers dropping below them in a fourth. I just don't think the Browns are ever going to live up to the expectations they had. It's probably a coaching situation, and I don't think Baker Mayfield's the answer. I think they reached when they drafted him, and I just think it's not as good as he's never going to live up to the hype that he had.
Yeah, their schedule is very interesting. Obviously, starting off with the Baltimore Ravens, definitely not the start that you want. But I think they get a couple of gimme games or some easier games, if you will. I think the Bengals, obviously, they're rebuilding with their defense and offensive line. The Redskins, they're the Redskins. We know all about the Redskins.
Alex Smith going to be back? I don't know.
They wish.
That leg.
Yeah, I know. I saw that ESPN
Brutal
report. It was very brutal. Yeah, I mean, just like looking at this, they're gonna have a tough time, but I still think that they managed to get second place in the division. I think Baker Mayfield is going to respond, but it's not going to be the response that we're kind of expecting for a number one overall pick. I think they're gonna go run heavy with Nick Chubb. I think that's what you need to do, especially when it comes to Baker Mayfield. Go with Kareem Hunt when I don't know if he's still in suspension or what's going on with him, but then you can play action pass to guys like Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. And I think instead of
the running backs are stacked.
The running backs are stacked, and I feel like they kind of forced the ball to Odell last year. Take advantage of your team. Use guys like Jarvis Landry. Use guys like Odell Beckham. But you got to start using the running backs. I feel like Nick Chubb is too good to not be used in the proper manner. Kareem Hunt, also a very good running back at Kansas City before he got released. So, he hasn't taken the wear and tear from the last couple of seasons. But I'm like you. Like, I worry about this team. Obviously, their offensive line is kind of questionable and suspect. But their defensive line is not too bad. We'll see what happens with Myles Garrett, what went on with that. But like you, I think the Cleveland Browns are number 2, just like Browns are. I'm not too convinced with them. But let's move on to a team that could hopefully try and rebound. That's what they're trying to do this season. Ben Roethlisberger finally healthy from that injury. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a very interesting team. I feel like they could be a dark horse in a wild card scenario. But what do we make of the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I'm not a fan of the Steelers. I think Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, he could surprise me, but I think he might be past his point of no return. For me, I think the Steelers have potential to take last in the division. I think the Browns, if you look at the roster, have a more talented roster overall than them, especially on offense. And I just feel like the Bengals with Joe Burrows and the receivers he has around him, he could really turn something special. And to me, I have it the Ravens, the Bengals, the Browns, and then the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, getting away from it, I do think that the Steelers are going to be the third place team. They just kind of look like a team that obviously Big Ben is recovering from his injury. I don't think he takes care of his body like these other quarterbacks do. I don't think he's out there, working out and getting better shape, especially for someone that is very old, at 38 years old, trying to play the NFL position. I mean, that's why I kind of have respect for guys like Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers. They kind of do a better job, I feel like, of preparing themselves, getting in shape. Obviously, when you play in the AFC North, it's going to be some brutal football. You're going to take some big hits. You're playing out in the snow. But like you, I think the thing that keeps them kind of afloat is their offensive line. I think that their offensive line is probably one of the better ones out there. But I'm not a fan of James Conner. I know James Conner's story. It's awesome and everything like that. But I'm just not sold on him as a running back.
I'm not either.
Juju, I'm still iffy on. I think he's okay.
I agree. I don't even know if Juju's a number 1 receiver, in my opinion.
I'm a fan of Eric Ebron. I think he has to be in the right system. But other than that, like defensively, I think they're okay. They have some great players on the defensive end, except at linebacker. I think linebacker, obviously, they're missing guys. Unfortunately, due to some injuries that happened years ago with Ryan Shazier, I thought he was going to be one of the best guys out there. They have T.J. Watt, who's pretty good, but other than that, maybe Devin Bush, if you want to count him. Obviously, a second-year player. Like you, I just think that they're not good enough. I think that Big Ben is going to be past his prime, and that's the reason why I have them in third. All right, moving right along, we, of course, have to talk about the AFC South Division. This division, of course, hosted by the Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Tennessee Titans, who were in that pivotal game that beat the Ravens and ultimately lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's, although, start off with the Houston Texans. There's a lot to say about the Houston Texans. Obviously, their head coach, not the brightest tool in the shed, but let's look at their schedule anyway and see what they can muster up with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, probably a tough schedule. First opening game, the Kansas City Chiefs, then the Baltimore Ravens, then the Steelers, then the Vikings. I could potentially see them going 1-4 in that scenario, with them winning over the Pittsburgh Steelers. But other than that, I think it lightens up towards the end. You have the Bears, who we don't know what's going to go on with them. You have the Bengals, who are obviously in a rebuild situation. You have the Lions in that mix. What do you make of the Houston Texans and their roster, and what do you make of their schedule? Like, where do you picture the Houston Texans going from here on out?
Yeah, they have a really tough schedule, honestly. Again, yeah, looking at those first 4 games, I mean, maybe they can compete with the Vikings. They can beat the Steelers for sure, but I mean, just like right away, going 0-2 may kill a team's momentum completely. Facing the Chiefs and the Ravens, that's tough. They got rid of DeAndre Hopkins for basically nothing, and yeah, they got Brandon Cooks, but he's injury prone and he's not a big guy. He's not someone who's going to just tear up a team like DeAndre Hopkins could. Yeah, maybe they can beat the Jaguars. Titans will be up in the air. Titans know how to control a game just with Derrick Henry. I personally expect the Titans to take a step back, but when you're facing these tough teams right at the beginning, and then you have the Packers and the Colts twice, who may be a lot better than last year. We haven't seen Phillip Rivers play on a competitive team in a long time. It feels like a decade that he hasn't had a competitive team, and so. Looking at that and seeing him going on to a 7-9 Colts team that really won without a good quarterback, I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to beat the Texans at least in one of those games. For me, I think the Texans are going to take a step back this year, but I love Deshaun Watson, honestly, and he can make plays. He's a great quarterback. And he reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson, and so I don't see any reason why he can't be a top quarterback in the league. But that division's just up in the air. I just don't think he has a lot of talent around him.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at their roster, I mean, when you make the comparison to Russell Wilson, yeah, he has to run for his life because his offensive line, besides Laramie Tunsil, is good on that line, and it just kind of goes to show you that he's got to make some plays, and that's the reason why he takes some of those big hits that we've kind of gone to see him kind of get injured with. Defensively, I think they're okay. They obviously are not as strong in the linebacker position I would like them to be. Defensive end, they still have J.J. Watt. On the other side, who knows? Cornerbacks, not really my favorite. You have Brandon Roby, decent corner. But the safeties are just another concern for mine. I mean, Justin Reed's not too bad, but other than that, the rest of them are kind of suspect at best. Like you, I'm not really completely sold on I can't remember the guy's name, Brian Billick or whatever his name is. I don't even want to talk about him because he obviously kind of is one of the worst GMs in the NFL. I mean, he's worse than Jerry Jones at times, and that's kind of hard.
Bill O'Brien or
Bill O'Brien? That's what I meant to say.
Bill O'Brien, yeah, their head coach.
Yeah, he's also part of the GM and the head decision making as who they
terrible.
bring in. I mean, their running back position, I do like Duke Johnson. I think he's okay. He'll be good. He'll be okay to good. I think he's going to help the team alleviate some.
They did trade So when they got rid of Hopkins, they got David Johnson, who personally I think is kind of washed up and really injury prone. But I mean, some people think he's really good. He's always been, I know, a top pick in fantasy football. So
Yeah, I'm just not sold on him as a running back. I think that he's one of those guys. There's a reason why the NFL career average is 6 years. He's on
yeah,
his sixth season now. I think that he's kind of in that his prime. He peaked at a very good time, but then he kind of fell off a little bit just due to the fact that as a running back, you get a lot of mileage taken advantage of you as a run heavy team, especially in Arizona.
definitely.
And so it takes years off his body. So I'm not really too sold on that. Like you, Brandon Cooks, not sold on him. Kenny Stills, okay. Will Fuller, if he's healthy, is fine and could produce for the
Just
team,
very
but
injury prone.
very injury prone. And their tight ends are kind of non-existent at best. I mean, like you, I am not sold on the Houston Texans being a number one team. I love Deshaun Watson, and obviously this is a quarterback league, and quarterbacks make or break a team. But it also has to come down to having players around him to support him. And I just think that unless the offense is catered towards him moving out of the pocket, a lot of RPOs, a lot of making sure that he's not staying in there, this team could potentially be a second place team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then when we kind of move on from them, the next team we have to look at, of course, are the Indianapolis Colts. This team adding Phillip Rivers was a big addition. Like you said, they went 7-9 last year without a quarterback after Andrew Luck unexpectedly retired from the team. Jacoby Brissett kind of held down the fort for a little bit, but obviously it was not enough for them as they went 7-9, like I talked about earlier. Their running back situation's okay. T.Y. Hilton's also in this team. What do we make of the Indianapolis Colts in their schedule?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the Colts schedule goes, they have a lot easier start than the other teams in their division. Just looking at starting off against the Jaguars, they don't necessarily have their starting quarterback. I mean, it looks like they're going with Gardner Minshew,
Yeah.
who's who's a slinger. I mean, he's pretty
Uncle
good.
Pedro.
Wazoo, shout out Wazoo, but and that stash, that's a good stash. But I mean, it's I don't think he necessarily has enough. Like whether it's coaching, a lot of disgruntled players on their time on their team. I know Leonard Fournette doesn't want to be there. They have the stuff with Yannick who doesn't want to be there. They just have a lot of tension there, and so it doesn't seem like it's a well gelled team. The Vikings they play week 2, who definitely they could lose to, but again, when you're bringing in a future Hall of Fame quarterback to play for your team who hasn't been with a good team in a long time. I mean, I know the Colts only had a 7-9 record last year, but they had a 7-9 record without a good quarterback. And so bringing in someone like Phillip Rivers, they could really turn that around. There's potential they could beat the Vikings. I don't think they necessarily will, but then they play the Jets, the Bears, the Browns, Bengals, and Lions. That's a potential to honestly start out 4-2, I would say. And going through that, then they'll play the Ravens, the Titans twice in 3 weeks, and the Packers. They could beat the Titans twice. I mean, Phillip Rivers is a quick throwing quarterback. Whenever I've seen the Seahawks play him, he's always about the quick slants. He's kind of like Tom Brady in that sense, and so he can get the ball quickly out of his hands. Doesn't need a big play. And the Titans are a team who needs to drain the clock. And so, as a quick throwing quarterback, that's like a team you can usually beat. And so just looking at that with, the Raiders and the Steelers and the Jaguars again, their schedule's pretty easy as in the way that it's structured. And so I could see the Colts doing really well, honestly. You give Phillip Rivers, T.Y. Hilton, and I don't see, any reason they can't compete for the division title.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that this is going to be with the addition of Phillip Rivers. I think this team could go over the hump as to their struggling needs because remember, this offensive line is probably one of the better offensive lines I feel like in the entire NFL. This offensive line was assembled to protect Andrew Luck before he unexpectedly retired. And I just like the makeup of this team. You have guys like Ryan Kelly, Quinn Nelson, Catazano, Anthony Castano, however you pronounce his name. I'm probably butchering it. But nevertheless, this offensive line is solid. It will protect Phillip Rivers, and Phillip Rivers will finally, have a protected line and they also drafted a lot of great running backs. I mean, they have Jonathan Taylor, who we both were really high on in the NFL draft.
Yep.
They still have Marlon Mack, who was a very solid solid running back in fantasy football, and also just as a regular running back, they have Naheem Hines. This team is a solid team, and I think that they're very well depth into a potential playoff push.
They also got DeForest Buckner.
They got DeForest Buckner too. I mean, this team,
that's an all-pro right there.
This team is built and scheduled to be, I believe, to beat the Tennessee Titans and overtake them. Obviously, Mike Vrabel and Derrick Henry had a nice story, but I think that it's time for the Colts to take over what that division was originally supposed to be. With Peyton Manning back in the day, Andrew Luck as he was growing up. I think now is the time for Phillip Rivers and the Indianapolis Colts to win the crown, and I think that they're actually going to do it this season. I have them number 1.
They also have Xavier Rhodes, too. I mean, they got a really good corner from Minnesota. So that's just a team that's improved in every important position you can find, whether it's D-line, secondary, or quarterback and running back. I mean, that's a team that's done really well in this offseason, and I also have them as my number 1 for the division.
And then let's move right along to former division champs of the AFC the AFC South, and that is, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars back in the day. Jaguars last season went 6-10. They were 4th in the division. Gunnar Minshew is now going to be the number 1 quarterback on the team after getting rid of Nick Foles, who got exposed as a phony, in my opinion. I thought he was always a phony. I know that what he did for Philadelphia was special, but not sold on him as a starting quarterback. There's a reason why he bounced around, but that's just my bias aside. Let's talk about this Jacksonville Jaguars team. Their schedule starts off relatively in a kind of interesting scenario where they have the Indianapolis Colts first, they have the Titans second, and then they played the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Texans, the Lions. It could potentially be a solid start to their season, beating a couple of those teams. What do we make of the Jacksonville Jaguars as they try to turn it around and finally commit to a quarterback, which is, of course, Gunnar Minshew is who they're going to be committing to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jaguars, for me, I still have them taking 4th. I could definitely see them taking, going off to a really hot start. But to me, they just don't have the chemistry and the weapons to get it done. They do have really good receivers, but at the same time, there's a lot of discontent on that team, and honestly, they have an easy schedule, but when you say they have an easy schedule, the other teams in their division have that basically same easy schedule. And when you look at like the upgrades the Colts did, and just looking at the quarterback situation, it seems like the Texans and the Colts have the best quarterbacks, and the Titans and the Jaguars both are still, even though the Titans made the playoffs, I feel like they're still just kind of figuring it out. And to me, the Jaguars don't have enough to get out of that bottom of the cellar there. There's definitely a chance they could win more games, and it could be a lot more competitive division. But I see all those teams floating around, more 9-7, 8-8 record, and so it's probably going to be really competitive right down to the end. But I just don't see the Jaguars being able to get out of the basement there, especially because, they finished below the Colts, and now the Colts just have a lot better team.
Right.
So I could just see the Jaguars still, staying at the bottom of the division.
Yeah, I just think like when we look at the Jaguars, obviously Gunnar Minshew is who they're going to be going with, but they also drafted a guy in Jake Luton who played at Oregon State. So that kind of goes to show you that they're probably not completely sold on Gunnar Minshew. I think that this is probably a make-or-break year. Being the starting quarterback, he kind of had that phenomenon, that craze, where everyone was wearing a fake mustache, making him memes about him looking like Uncle Pedro.
Yep.
It's like you said, but there's also discontent on this team. We got Leonard Fournette, who they're not going to be exercising their fifth-year option on him. They got Yannick, who is probably going to be traded at some point or maybe just let go.
They had Ramsey the year before. It's just like it seems like they can't keep their good players happy.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because, they have such a young owner, an owner who's in his 30s. It's surprising to me that they're not able to kind of relate to those guys, for drafting 20-something-year-olds. And I would think that would be a more relatable approach. But, It is what it is with the owner. Obviously, they get into their beefs or whatever that might have you, but I'm like you. I'm not completely sold on the Jaguars, and I'm like you. I have them fourth. I just can't see the Jaguars team with their roster, with their schedule, who, like you said, they have the same one as the other guys in the division. I just don't see them winning enough games to even be competitive. I think they're probably going to have the same record, I feel like, as they did last year.
Yep. I could totally see that.
And then we got to move on to our division winners last year, which was the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans are trying to come back. Vrabel, the head coach, made a name for himself in this year. A lot of Bill Belichick assistants don't do very well, but he was one of the lucky ones that actually did pretty well with a heavy dose of Derrick Henry in the offense. Probably wear and tear into that body. Played 5 years. Looking at this team, where do you see them? Do you see them repeating as champs? They took second. Excuse me. They went 9-7 last year.
It's the wild card, though.
The wild card, yep. And they made that huge run.
Yeah.
Obviously, looking at this team, what do we make of them?
I mean, to me, I don't see many upgrades. It looks like they more just retain talent, which is a good thing. But at the same time, I mean, they get another year with A.J. Brown to develop. He's a really good receiver. He's probably one of the best rookie receivers from last year. But when you look at it, I just think people will adapt to Derrick Henry, and this year will be a testament to if Ryan Tannehill can succeed as an NFL quarterback. And so I think the box is going to get stacked a lot more against Henry. They're going to be looking for him to continuously get fed. And I don't know if Ryan Tannehill is necessarily good enough to be able to carry that team. And so if he can't make those throws and make those plays, I see them sinking into third place and missing the playoffs.
Yeah, obviously Mike Vrabel did a lot of magic with this roster. I'm not particularly sure how he did it. But nevertheless, obviously we know how with Derrick Henry. It's a heavy dose of him. And I think that he is going to try and do it again next year. But I think they're going to have to address this quarterback position. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill, they tried to make him the answer in Miami. It didn't work. He got bounced around a little bit. Ended up in Tennessee. Had some success, but when it came to making the big throws that the Titans needed to win some of their games, he just couldn't make them. And obviously, it's great when you're ahead. You play that type of style where you're ahead. You're able to run the ball, run it heavy. But when you get behind, especially when you play guys like Patrick Mahomes who are in that division, it's kind of an interesting scenario where you are not able to come back because you have Ryan Tannehill and his limitations as a quarterback. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And like you, I think the Titans are going to fall back. I don't think that they're going to be making the playoffs. I think that Mike Vrabel, although he did a great job for them, what I'm seeing is that if the teams are able to stack the box against Derrick Henry, there's no way that Tannehill is going to be able to make those throws. And the receivers, I feel like, aren't good enough to get open themselves. Obviously, they're talented players, but I just don't think that it's going to be enough for Ryan Tannehill to throw them open.
Definitely. I agree.
And speaking of that, I have, like I said, the Colts, Texans, Titans, and Jaguars. Did you have that same order?
I have that exact same order, my opinion.
Of course, these are just our opinions, but let's move on to our opinion of the AFC West. This, of course, is going to be a very interesting one, as we know now that we have a new addition to this team, even though they're from the Oakland area. We got the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, and
yes.
But before we start off with the Raiders, we got to start off with the Denver Broncos, as they are a team with a young quarterback. They finally committed to that guy. What's his name again? His name is Drew Lock. I don't know why I said it like that, but Drew Lock is going to be their starting quarterback. Denver Broncos, what do we make of their roster? What do we make of their schedule? What do we like? What do we dislike about them? Let me know, Sean.
I mean, I like their draft pick in Jerry Jeudy, but I mean, outside of that, they got Melvin Gordon, but Philip Lindsay was already, I feel like, reaching the potential of the talent they can get out of a running back.
Right.
They added some additions to their O-line. But I just don't see enough, even with adding, I think Justin Simmons is the free safety. I just don't see enough for them to be able to compete. You can't really compete with a bad quarterback, and for me, Drew Lock is a bad quarterback.
Yeah, so the Denver Broncos went 7-9 last year, second in the AFC West. Like you said, I'm looking at their roster. Melvin Gordon, obviously a good addition to them, but they have Philip Lindsay already, so it's kind of a mute point. They obviously added Jerry Jeudy. But when I look at the rest of their roster, I'm not convinced that this is a contending, at least for the division, at least, a contending team. They obviously have some good pieces here. Von Miller, a great player, 10 years in the league. But other than that, when I look at their roster, when I look at everything that there is about this team, I'm just not sold on it. I think that they're going to be probably last in the division, in my opinion. I think that looking at their schedule, looking at the teams that they have to play, obviously they're going to be playing the AFC North teams. So you have like the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Jets. Are going to be playing the Buccaneers. I think this is not going to be a good season for them. I think that they're going to be last in the division.
I don't think they're going to be overperforming in any way possible. I can agree there.
And let's move on to, of course, the inevitable last year Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes playing very well last season. When we look at their schedule, obviously we know how talented they are. They added some more pieces for Mahomes instead of working on the defense this draft. What do we make of the Kansas City Chiefs schedule? Where do you see them?
They definitely have a decently tough schedule, but I don't see any reason they shouldn't be able to just go on a massive winning streak here. If the Texans are going to take a step back, I don't see any reason he can't outduel Deshaun Watson and easily beat the Chargers. The Ravens, that Week 3 game is going to be a super exciting game. You'll get the New England Patriots. That's a weak team. The Raiders are going to be a weak team, and I don't think Josh Allen's that good. So they'll go through the Bills and the Broncos, and right there, that's probably at worst, in my opinion, they might be 6-1, 5-2. And the back half of their schedule really isn't that hard outside of facing the Saints and the Bucks, who are really up in the air. We don't know how good the Bucks are going to be, so I don't see any reason that the Chiefs won't be a top 1 or 2 seed in the AFC here. They definitely didn't lose players that helped them contend. So I definitely think they're going to be back as a top seed, and I don't see any reason they shouldn't be able to contend to go back to the Super Bowl, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're probably going to be the number 1 team in the AFC. I don't see them at all having any issues contending in this division. I think that this division is probably one of the, in terms of difficulties, probably one of the weaker ones for the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, I think that they're going to win all their games. It's just a question of, are they going to have that Super Bowl hangover? Obviously, they won last year. Are they going to try and go for another one this year? Mahomes, of course, Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. I think that he has done a tremendous job at the quarterback position, has really revolutionized the game with some of his passing. And like you, they added a lot more pieces. They're going to be a lot more competitive. They're going to be a lot more tough. They got the guy from LSU, Clyde Edwards,
the running back,
there, yep. They've added, like I said, they've added some great pieces to this team, and obviously they're going to be offensive heavy this coming season. And like you, I think that they're probably going to be the number 1 team in the AFC and probably going to be the number 1 team in their division. Now let's talk about probably one of the more fun teams of this league, just because of where they're located, Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Raiders. I almost call them the LA Raiders, but they're the LV, if you want to say that. LV Raiders. Looking at the Raiders schedule, looking at their roster, are you a fan of this Raiders team? Do you think that they'll surprise some people, or do you think they'll kind of stay where they're at and kind of be a contending team but not a great team?
Yeah. I don't know how much of a believer I am in Derek Carr, and I think, every good team is built around a quarterback. You're not going to make a big run without a good quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how they use Henry Ruggs III. If he can be a huge difference maker, he could be amazing for their team and really push them into wild card contention, in my opinion. but a receiver that's small like Henry Ruggs, a fast small receiver, I've never really seen them, as far as I know and can think of, someone who translates into, an extra amount of wins for a team. So really, when you start looking at it, I just see that the Raiders, may kind of stay, right where they are. There's a chance they could go up into second place in their division. And so that's where I could see them, making maybe an 8-8 or 9-7 record, and that could, push them with the extra playoff spots now this year. That could push them into wild card contention, but I don't see them making any massive leap from where they were last year at 7-9.
Yeah, I'm like you. I think that Derek Carr is kind of an average quarterback. I think that he'll take them as far as he can, just with his limitations. Josh Jacobs was definitely a remedy for that with the way that he was able to run the ball for a rookie. Obviously, having the rushing rookie record, but probably should have won off Rookie Player of the Year. Sorry, Kyler Murray. I don't think that you deserved it. But nevertheless, like looking at their roster, looking at their schedule, I think just like you, they're probably going to be that 9-7, 8-8. Kind of like that gambling team. Like, do you make a gamble or do you just keep them? Like, what's going to be the point for the Raiders? Are they going to be satisfied with going to the playoffs, or are they going to be satisfied with going to try and make the Super Bowl run? And that's the question that Mike Mayock and John Gruden have to ask themselves. Like, what are we trying to vie for here? If we're trying to make the Super Bowl, then I think you have to get rid of Derek Carr, or this has to be the ultimatum year, because like you, I'm just not convinced with Derek Carr as my starter.
I mean, they have Marcus Mariota as a backup, and I would almost want to take a gamble with Marcus Mariota over Derek Carr if I was their coach, if I was John Gruden. I think Marcus Mariota is an accurate quarterback. He's good on the run. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't test him over Derek Carr, but we'll see how their preseason plays out and how their regular season plays out. It may end up making a switch there.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Marcus Mariota either. I think that he is. I think he was obviously a reach. I felt like at number 2 for the Tennessee Titans. I'm not a big fan of him. I think that he's very limited in his throwing mechanics. And I think that he's very limited in what he can do as an NFL quarterback. I think you just ride the ship with Derek Carr. Obviously, I don't think John Gruden, from what I've read and what I've seen body language-wise on the field, watching games of the Oakland Raiders, now the Las Vegas Raiders, I just don't know what John Gruden wants. And I know that John Gruden has some he has some weird tendencies to him, and I'm just curious to see next year what quarterback he decides to bring in. I think John Gruden is a very big Mariota fan.
He is. I remember that from his camps, his little quarterback camps.
So I can agree to your point that they'll probably try him out, see what they can do with him. But to be honest, I'm not sure about this team. And like you, I think that this is probably going to be, like I said, 9-7, 8-8 team. I think that the Raiders are not good enough.
They also have Nathan Peterman at third string, Mr. 6 interceptions in the first half.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can tell that the Raiders, living by their moniker of Las Vegas, they like to gamble, and they're gambling on 2 backup quarterbacks with Marcus Mariota and Peterman. But that is going to be the end of our segment, guys. We're going to be doing the NFC division at some point. But first, we're going to put out the AFC divisions. Let us know what you think about them. Quickly, before we go, Sean, who are going to be your top two seeds for this AFC division before we head out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be the same as the year before with the Chiefs as number 1 and the Ravens. I think it's going to swap. So I think the Chiefs will be the 1 and the Ravens the 2. The Ravens do have a really easy schedule, but I think Mahomes is just going to continue to progress. And I think they've just only added pieces, upgrading their running back situation. Damian Williams was already pretty good, but they've gotten even better. I just don't see any reason why the Chiefs and the Ravens won't be the top teams there, especially with the Patriots taking a downturn and the Texans, I feel like, also taking a downturn.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the Chiefs are probably going to be the number 1 seed here. We know that Mahomes is a great quarterback. He's only getting better, and they have to take advantage of not paying him yet.
Yeah.
to take advantage of getting a lot more pieces to their Super Bowl roster. They're probably going to try and trade some picks, trade some assets to get some more help for Patrick Mahomes, whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side. And to be honest, I really see that the Ravens are going to be the number 2 seed, but we'll talk about playoff predictions in another video. But like I said, guys, that's going to be it for the AFC. Thank you, Sean, for coming on here on The Charge, starting out this new segment that we're trying. Like I said, I want this channel to be more than just basketball. I love basketball. I think basketball is awesome, as you can tell in my background over here. But I want to start, and of course, Sean's
Brandon Clark, baby.
Brandon Clark, thinking he's going to be Rookie of the Year.
Better than Ja.
Maybe we'll have to discuss that another time. But like I said, guys, this is it for the AFC predictions, what we think of the schedule, what we think of each division, who's going to be number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And like I said, guys, just wait for more content on NFL. We'll talk maybe some soccer, maybe our football for our European guys. You know, maybe we might even talk some baseball if we feel up to it. But like I said, guys, that is going to be it here on The Charge. I know I talked a lot. Thank you, Sean, like I said again, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.